Hello, everyone. How are you doing? And welcome to another episode of the Dr. Will Show, where we have the discussions that inform, entertain, and empower educators to be the change. I'm your host, Dr. Will, and I'm here today with Kristin Ziemke. How are you doing, Kristin?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Excellent, excellent. Thanks for asking, and thanks for being a guest on the show.
Happy to be here.
Excellent. So, people, we are going to be talking about blending it up in an iPad classroom. Now, over the past 4 years, I've had the experience in leading and managing and working with teachers in a one-to-one environment, but we use Chromebooks. So I don't have the experience with iPads, in that setting. And I know that a lot of teachers out there have, and then people who will be listening to the show have that experience. So I wanted to kind of bring in an expert to talk about her experiences with using iPads in the classroom and hopefully give you some tips. So for those who are watching, will you please introduce yourself, Kristin?
Sure. My name is Kristin Ziemke, and I am a teacher in Chicago and learning innovation specialist. I work on the south side of the city in a school that is pre-K through 8th grade. And we have had iPads in the elementary school for a number of years, Chromebooks in our middle school. So a little bit of a hybrid model. I'm an Apple Distinguished Educator and the author of a book called Amplified Digital Teaching and Learning in the K-6 Classroom.
Excellent, excellent. So how do you define going digital? And what critical steps must be taken to move a school or district from the traditional mindset towards a digital mindset?
Yeah, I think for me, going digital means adding another layer for students to think. And when we look at bringing technology in the classroom, I don't really think it's about replacing another modality or even about going paperless. Yes, we're probably using fewer pieces of paper across the day, but really what we're looking to do is find access and entry to all students. So how can we reach someone with a visual or video? How can we invite kids to connect with real world audiences? And more than it being about trying a new tool or bringing in new elements of our curriculum, it's really about that mindset piece where we're saying, now this is possible. And if we position kids, I think, in a place of possible, then they have the opportunity to create their own learning adventure, and oftentimes I think exceed what we might expect of them.
So you have taught in a digital environment with iPads. Give us a glimpse into your classroom. What is the learning curve for teachers for implementing iPads into the classroom?
Yeah, great question. One of the things you asked was like, how does a school adapt and adopt this type of work? And I think it requires quite a bit of professional learning from the administration, from the teachers, and from the parent community as well. We're thinking about what would make sense with these tools for kids, but really looking at the pedagogical foundation of why. How are these tools or devices going to change learning? What should it look like? Are we using them just because they showed up in our classroom, or is the purpose guided by what we know about student learning? And so for the best use, I think really looking at how can we give teachers tools that they can use right away? What is a limited number of applications or extensions that we can use in every single subject? And so I'm a big fan of less being more. I don't think we need 50 tools that can help kids look at math facts or go about sight word or spelling practice. But instead, if we have maybe 7 to 10 simple tools that invite kids to make something, to create, to show what they know in drawing, writing, video, photography, those are the best tools. And really looking at, does this tool work in math, in ELA, in the sciences, and in the arts? And then by giving kids lots of time with the same tools, we see students layer them together and innovate to create something new. And so I think that's where we want to be. I think really getting colleagues as well to look at how these devices are immersed in our instruction and in our curriculum. I see many schools with the best of intentions, of course, being like, okay, we're going to do our same old units of study, and at the end layer on a piece of technology, and then we'll be like, yes, we did it, you know. But it really isn't just a project. It's really more about the practices that we do day in and day out that get kids to be independent thinkers.
Cool, cool. And I like what you said there, because some of the work that I do with my teachers is really to get them think about how does going digital fundamentally change instruction, and not just we're going to have a technology station. You know, so like when I walk into a classroom and it's like, we're going to have a technology station, I'm like, because I know what that means, right? I know, okay, we're going to put them on this district paid tool.
Yeah.
For, you know, so many minutes, and usually it means remediation, as opposed to really challenging students, really engaging students in ways that, you know, pencil and paper does not, and providing learning opportunities for students that extend beyond the boundaries of the classroom.
Absolutely. And I think it's with the best of intentions, right? Like teachers know they need to do something, and they're trying to vet the tool as they're planning for the rest of the curriculum and instruction. So it makes sense, like, oh, we're going to do a center and, you know, do sight word practice or something along those lines, because they know that is an entry point that they can handle. But I think really if we can nudge our colleagues and our friends to be brave and try something new and really look at all the different ways that this can impact kids. You know, I think like one of the simplest ways to completely transform a curriculum with devices is to use a video and have kids talk to the camera just like we're doing right now, because for us as educators, that's a one-way conference. That's conferring and extending our time with students. You know, instead of just talking one-on-one where 30 people are home alone back here, now I can check back in with that student's video when the child's at lunch or at art class or after school, and get some feedback that I can use to then plan for teaching that child tomorrow. So it doesn't have to be, you know, knowing the 50 best tools for 4th grade, but it could really be knowing 5 great tools that you sort of shampoo, model, and lather, rinse, repeat, because you're really getting high quality information from kids.
Cool. So part of going digital includes a blended learning strategy. The online component to a blended learning environment can be anything from software programs to a fully designed online courses via an LMS. How should teachers go about selecting which applications to use?
I think that we all have different standards and scope and sequence and school district guidelines that we're trying to adhere to and meet. And of course, there will have to be a balance of what we're doing on devices, right? Yes, sometimes we're going to have to do district-wide assessment, right? Yes, sometimes we're going to have to do PARC or ACT Aspire. But in my mind, I like to think about pulling like a Warren Buffett model and going 80-20 with that type of stuff. And I like to think, okay, about 20% of the time, we're going to be gathering this type of data that we need to report to stakeholders using our devices. The other 80% of the time, we're really going to be looking for kids to make something to show what they know. And so I think that's the best blended tool out there, tool like a screencasting application, like an Explain Everything, right? That would work on Chromebooks or iPads. That would be something that we could use in math, in science, in literacy, in the arts. And so that's a high quality tool that we want to put in front of kids. Looking for sites that promote curiosity and thinking. I love Wonderopolis, for example, as a question of the day blog that you can use in literacy, science, history, all of those pieces. So I think when we look at the tools that we're selecting, we really need to be mindful about those that invite kids to make something. And then when we're saying make something, kids can go as complex or as simple as they want. My colleague Larry Reef, who's also an Apple Distinguished Educator, he works in New York and teaches secondary Shakespeare, actually. We talk all the time about how I'm using the exact same tools in 3rd grade as he's using in 9th and 10th grade, and that just like text complexity, kids are cycling in depth and breadth based on what they know. Their responses are getting more complex while using the same foundational tools.
Nice. So when going digital, teachers are going to need a centralized hub to store their resources as well as to deliver instruction. What have you used and how are you utilizing an LMS, for example, to assist teachers in creating a workflow with a blended learning environment?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of different options, and I think there are a couple core pieces that come into play to make sort of a trifecta of success. And I think for me, that would be some type of classroom website where kids and families can go to access everything else. So whether you're using Google Sites or something like a Weebly or Squarespace, you have to have that hub that connects people. And I think a website is an important piece because it's not limited to just students in the classroom or the building. The rest of the world can see and access. And so that's where we start building some of that authenticity. I think some type of LMS, whether you choose to use Google Classroom or Apple or Edmodo or Schoology, some place where kids can go to share work and have conversations that might not be public. There will be times throughout the year that just the 33 of us need to go and have some conversation, or where kids can turn in different work artifacts. And I think using an LMS to do a lot of written or digital conversations is a powerful piece. To share videos, to get feedback on work before it goes maybe to a more formal publication is a great way to use that piece. And then I am a huge fan of student blogs. And I think that connection again to kids around the world or to specialists that might give you feedback, or just knowing that the important thinking you do in this classroom lives in the real world is such a quality piece. I think with blogging, especially in elementary, we follow a gradual release of responsibility model, right? We do it just with our class first. We're going to make mistakes, learn how to use it. Then maybe we open it up to the school community and converse with our 5th grade blogging buddies. And then finally open it up to the world so that our grandma in Atlanta can comment on it, or that the kids that we're partnering with in British Columbia can have that conversation piece. So for me, it's a website, it's an LMS, and it's a blog. And I think those three together situate kids in a place where they're doing real work. I think as an educator, one of the things I'm questioning constantly is, are we asking kids to do work that lives in the real world, or is it fake school work? A lot of things that fall under that school umbrella oftentimes only lives in school settings. And so the more we can push kids to use the modeling that they're seeing on a daily basis, they're online and on websites and are analyzing how photos and videos inform whether they read the text and, you know, give feedback. Those are all real world models that we can then bring into. When would you design your blog with 1 photo or 9 photos, you know, and to be critical about some of those things. So I think if you have those 3 all together, that's perfect for students to get anywhere else. That would be at the more complex end of the spectrum. I love simple tools like Padlet as well to gather resources and to push content to students. It's got a wonderful visual feature. It's easy to access via link or QR, and that can sort of be a hub for kids as well.
Excellent. So now let's jump into instruction and lesson planning. How should a teacher break down that traditional lesson plan and use technology to allow for greater student ownership and to create opportunities for students to provide evidence of their understanding outside of a worksheet or standard essay?
Yeah, I think a number of things, right? Technology in our classrooms, even if it's just your one teacher device plugged into some type of projector or a smart board, changes things. And even with one device, we have so many opportunities to teach digital citizenship and navigating online. And where I see a huge benefit is that now I'm using tech to connect kids to things they didn't even know they were curious about, and to sort of incite that flame to do follow-up pursuit and inquiry with. So I think many times using the digital to launch a unit of study with images or a short video clip and applying some visual thinking strategies. What do you see? What do you think? What do you wonder, right? What more do you want to learn? Those strategies can be used in any content or literacy or math unit. I think giving kids an opportunity to connect beyond the school day is one of the benefits of bringing tech into our classrooms. So say if you're doing literature circles or book clubs with students, yes, they'll continue to meet face-to-face during class time like they always have, but they can also now connect on Edmodo or Schoology and have some of that preliminary discussion online so that their face-to-face time is amplified in terms of what the content and themes that they're addressing. So I'm seeing all of these ways that we just add another layer for kids to think, whether it be that extended time after school, or maybe for those students that weren't good at worksheets. I know I wasn't a child that learned by worksheets, but now we can say, watch a video, make something, break it down, talk to a friend, all of these different ways to give them time to think about content. And then I think really looking at the differentiation piece as a huge win for kids. How does watching a colleague in class talk about something and having the ability to go back and watch it again change what you know, right? Like how does that multiple viewings behind a lesson impact kids? Or how does that immediate feedback or knowing that there's someone else online who might understand the homework that you didn't get really scaffold and support kids? So I think holding on to some of those principles of active literacy, right? Giving kids lots of fluency with devices so they can become better at using devices, and then really looking at the inquiry and curiosity factors.
Awesome, awesome. So, every device has its pros and cons. With the iPad, you have the creation tools, but you still have the ability to use the G Suite apps. Mm-hmm. What are some of the successes you have actually seen in your classroom or in other classrooms?
Yeah, I think the iPad absolutely gives a whole different layer of mobility in some ways, because just the portability of the tablet device and pairing it with the creation tools really gives kids the opportunity to make every space a learning space, right? Like we think 15 years ago when our computers were lined up on the wall and had to be plugged in because that's where the internet lived. And now we have devices all over the room. Well, with an iPad, you can put it on the floor, you can go into the hall, you can bring it into the field trip or the playground experience with ease. So I absolutely think that's a benefit. When you pair some of the creation tools with the G Suite applications, now you can share those easily and collaborate on different things. And so whereas I see a lot of benefit is the feedback piece, right? How can kids create a documentary, do some initial thinking, get feedback from their friends, and then open it back up in iMovie to edit would be a big piece. I think also creating just a shared drive file that can be shared with families of the classroom. What are kids putting in there that families could see that might be a little bit less public than some other spaces would be a powerful tool. But I think one of my favorite ways to sort of layer those pieces together is to have kids create videos with an iMovie or a Clips, share it in a Google Drive, and then bring it into some type of slide presentation that everyone can access, that kids can take slide notes on and really think about the formatting. So just the versatility of going between the two is something that I really like. I also like just with the iPad, you can get a lot of bodies around it. You know, it lends towards collaboration because there's not that screen barrier between kids, and then you can prop it up on a wall and say, okay, you know, like lean it against the bookshelf, the 5 of you watch this really quick, and then head back into the library to do more research.
So earlier you mentioned that you are an Apple Distinguished Educator.
Yeah.
What is the, you're like, yes. What is the ADE program and how has it influenced your thinking about teaching and learning?
Yeah, the ADE program brings together educators who are working deeply in Apple products from around the world to really share some of their successes, some of their struggles, and to build this idea of global collaboration where we're really talking about what's best for kids in a worldwide capacity. Being a teacher in a school, you know that you are often isolated from anyone, sometimes even down the hall, let alone outside the school. Now we have social media and we're connecting online, but really having that time to come face to face and hear people's stories often inspires us as educators to have another go or to try something new. So I think what I've learned from the ADE community is that there is someone on call around the globe 24/7 that is willing to give some feedback, help you out, or partner up with a project. And so some of my favorite moments have been collaborating with educators I never knew before to do partnered projects with our students so that kids could see like, oh yeah, you're in Singapore, you have different books than we do in some areas of your classroom library, but you also have Baby Mouse and Squish and Babysitters Club, and now let's get online and have a cross-global book club and see that actually, even though we might have some differences, when you peel back the layers, we're more similar than we are different. And so I think when we look at a global digital world, those are the kind of experiences our kids need to have, especially as we're seeing some things of late come about difference and lack of empathy and compassion and understanding. Anytime we have the opportunity to create those relationships as educators has a direct impact on our kids.
So before we go, what is your advice for school districts? You know, all of us are on Twitter, but not all of us. Most educators aren't on Twitter, really.
I know, it still surprises me because I've met like people who have become my Twitter friends, who become my best friends in real life, and it's such a great way to connect.
Yes, and it's terrible when you go to a conference and it's not connected because you're like, oh, this conference is not that good.
I know, I'm sitting there, I'm like, Bueller, like, is anyone out there tweeting as well?
Yeah, compared to ISTE, which is a very connected conference.
Yes. In Chicago.
Yes, and the wife and I are planning to go there. My wife is actually from there. She graduated from Knox College.
Oh, yay. Awesome. Well, I hope we can meet up then.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's the game plan. But everyone is, the one-to-one movement has caught on. More schools are actually, you know, paying for the devices. Now, whether that's they need devices for testing or they need devices because they're thinking, hey, you know, this is a wonderful opportunity for our students. Or quite honestly, some teachers want to brag, hey, we're one-to-one.
Yeah.
But in any case, what is your advice for school districts who are in the process of looking at devices and the iPad is one of their choices?
Sure. I think when you talk about the devices you're selecting, that's very personal and often has a longer history than just what we're looking at as classrooms going one-to-one and mobile in the last 7 to 10 years with who districts have committed to over time or have relationships with. I'm recommending iPads for elementary learners. I think it's the perfect tool for that K-5, K-6 age range. And then I think there's a lot of opportunities to transition maybe to other devices in middle and high school. But I think regardless of what you choose and being device agnostic, I think my advice to districts would be go slow in order to go fast. And, you know, my mentor, Stephanie Harvey, always says, I hate when people say, don't sweat the small stuff, because it's all small stuff. And so really looking at, okay, what can we do right now? And then how are we going to add one more thing and one more thing? It's really about looking at those small baby steps of how are we deploying devices, how are we pushing extensions or applications, what are we doing in terms of moving devices around the building, what are our expectations for kids, how are we going to respond when something goes wrong, because something is going to go wrong. You know, we're talking about working with children, but we need to have a measured response to that. I think something else that I'm really looking at is that we're developing teachers' knowledge of these tools and encouraging teachers to take risks and be brave. You know, I often think the best option is to say, take this year, figure some things out, try things, let us know how it goes, and then we'll come back and really start establishing maybe a more formal digital learning curriculum or routines after that year one, when we have more knowledge about these tools. I think we also have to be systematic in, okay, we're going to try these things, and we're going to be clear in teaching kids how to use these as tools for thinking. One thing I would absolutely say is that we need to caution our assumptions on what kids know and are able to do. Yes, they know how to use them for entertainment, but they don't know how to use them as tools for thinking. And I think that's our big goal as educators, is to really teach them where you can go to find information, how you can connect with meaningful audiences, and ultimately how we use these tools to create empathy and build a world that's a little bit more kind. So even if you're teaching 9th and 10th grade and you think, oh, students know how to use these tools for everything, I don't know anything, it's really important to cycle in those instructional strategy pieces on how to use them as tools for thinking.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you again, Kristin, for being a guest on the show.
I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Hey, thank you. You're the expert. I'm just a guy with a hangout.
Awesome.
And so for those, hey, watching, you know how we do. This is going up on my YouTube channel. Please subscribe. I'm going to put this on the blog. This is being tweeted out on Twitter, LinkedIn, and the audio versions for those who like to work out and listen to podcasts. This is going to be on SoundCloud and iTunes.
Cool.
So until next time, people, invest in you, EDU, peace.